Candida Joetta stood before the altar, her hand steady as she said, "I do." The cameras flashed. Guests smiled. The billionaire groom looked at her like she was his forever. But under that lace veil, she was hiding a secret. She didn't marry him for love. She married him for payback. He was the brother of the man who ruined her father, the man who left her family in shame. This marriage was her revenge, carefully planned, quietly executed. But love has a strange way of fighting back, because the man she vowed to destroy would become the only one who could heal her. Welcome to Mr. Leonardo's Stories, where love meets lessons and every scar has meaning. If you believe love can grow even from pain, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Now, let's begin this story, one where revenge met the wrong heart and found redemption instead. The Texas sun burned hot that afternoon, but Candida didn't feel it. She stood at her father's grave, the cemetery quiet, except for the hum of distant cars and the restless wind. Her hands trembled as she placed a white rose on the soil, whispering, "I'll make them remember you, Daddy." Her voice cracked, but her resolve didn't. Her father, Daniel Joetta, had once owned a thriving logistics company, Joetta Haulage. That worked under Farmson Holdings, one of Houston's biggest transport conglomerates. It was supposed to be a partnership built on trust, until the Farmsons pulled the plug. They said her father breached contract terms. He swore he hadn't. But when the lawyers came, when the bank seized the trucks, when the headlines painted him a fraud, no one cared what he said. By the time Candida turned 16, her family was ruined. By 18, she was watching her father's heart give out under the weight of shame. The world moved on. She didn't. After his death, bitterness became her companion. It fueled her studies. It kept her focused. While others dreamed of success, she dreamed of justice. Her mother, the gentlest woman alive, saw it happening, saw her daughter's heart harden. "Don't let anger decide your future, baby," she had pleaded before she died 2 years ago. "Live for something better than pain." But pain was all Candida had left. When she moved back to Houston at 25, she didn't come for peace. She came for payback. Her research was precise. Farmson Holdings was now under a new CEO. Justin Farmson, the younger brother of Daniel Farmson, the man responsible for her father's downfall. Justin was known for being quiet, fair, and less ruthless than his brother. But to Candida, they shared the same blood, the same legacy. And when she learned he was hiring a new corporate communications manager, she saw her chance. She stayed up all night rewriting her resume. Her name was bold at the top, Candida Joetta. She wanted him to see it, to recognize it, to remember it. By morning, she submitted her application. That evening, she sat by her window with a cup of black coffee, staring at the city lights. Her reflection in the glass looked like her mother's, calm face, tired eyes, but a heart full of plans. She whispered to herself, "This time, I'll be the one writing the ending." The next day, her phone rang. "Ms. Joetta?" a woman's voice said. "This is Farmson Holdings. The CEO would like to meet you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Candida's heart skipped. 10 years of resentment began to stir, twisting into focus. She smiled faintly. "I'll be there." That night, she couldn't sleep. She pictured the Farmson building, tall, glassy, and cold. She imagined walking through those doors, shaking hands with the man who bore the name she hated most. Her mind was sharp, but her chest tightened with something strange. Anticipation mixed with unease. "Don't lose yourself," she whispered into the dark. "This isn't love, it's justice." But deep down, even she didn't believe that. Because revenge, no matter how righteous it feels, always costs something. And Candida was about to learn how expensive the heart can be. The morning sun reflected off the glass walls of Farmson Holdings like a mirror, daring her to face her past. Candida adjusted her blazer, took one steady breath, and walked through the revolving doors. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing louder than she expected. Every sound in the lobby felt amplified. The hum of printers, the faint ring of phones, the low murmur of assistants. She glanced at the company logo displayed on the wall. Farmson Holdings, moving the future. Her chest tightened. That slogan had once been painted on her father's trucks. Miss Joetter? She turned. A receptionist smiled politely. Mr. Farmson will see you now. Top floor. The elevator ride felt endless. She caught her reflection in the mirrored panel. Calm, composed, unreadable. You're not here to feel, she reminded herself quietly. You're here to win. The doors opened to a quieter floor. Clean lines, soft lighting, muted colors, everything screamed precision and power. A tall man stood by the glass window. His back turned as he read something on a tablet. Mr. Farmson, the assistant announced. Your 10 o'clock is here. He turned. That was the first time Candida saw Justin Farmson. He wasn't what she expected. No arrogance. No smugness. Just a calm, intelligent face with eyes that carried quiet depth, grey, sharp, observant. He looked younger than the press photos had suggested, maybe early 30s, with neatly trimmed hair and a tone that didn't need to shout to command respect. Miss Joetter, he said, stepping forward. His handshake was firm, but unhurried. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, she replied smoothly. He motioned for her to sit. I'll be honest, I almost didn't call you in. Her pulse quickened. Because of my last name? He raised an eyebrow slightly. You noticed? Most people do, she said, keeping her tone even. He leaned back in his chair. I did some digging. Daniel Joetter, owner of Joetter Haulage, correct? Her heart thudded once. Yes. He was my father. Justin nodded slowly. He was a good businessman. I read some of his early work with our logistics branch. The reports were solid. It's a shame how things ended back then. Candida froze. A shame? Yes, he said quietly. My brother was in charge at the time. I wasn't part of the company yet. I was still studying abroad. But from what I've read, your father deserved better communication, not the sudden cut-off he got. That sentence disarmed her completely. She came ready for tension, not empathy. Why are you bringing this up? She asked carefully. Because, he said, closing his tablet, I don't want you to think I hired blindly. I knew who you were before your resume even crossed my desk. Her breath caught. So, why call me? Because talent shouldn't pay for history, he said simply. And because your application was excellent. You know the industry, you write with clarity, and your references are impressive. He smiled faintly. I trust skill over surname. Candida stared at him, unsure how to respond. Everything about this man contradicted the picture she had built in her head. No arrogance, no hint of guilt or hostility, just quiet fairness. I appreciate that, she managed. He studied her face a moment longer, then nodded. Let's skip the usual interview questions. Tell me what drives you. She blinked. What drives me? Yes. Everyone says passion or ambition. I want something real. Candida hesitated. What drove her? Revenge. Anger. Her father's last words. But she couldn't say that, so she said softly, purpose. I like finishing what I start. Justin's expression didn't change, but his eyes held her longer than they should have. Purpose, he repeated. That's a good word. You're hired. Candida blinked. Just like that? He stood, offering his hand again. I don't waste time when I see potential. Her fingers brushed his. The contact was brief, but sent a current she couldn't explain. As she stepped out of his office, she realized her breathing had changed. Slower, uneven, almost uncertain. In the elevator, she leaned back against the mirror, staring at her reflection again. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to feel anything. But Justin Farmson had just looked at her like she was someone worth believing in. And that frightened her more than all her plans combined. That night, she sat by her window again, Houston's lights flickering in the distance. She replayed his voice in her head, calm, thoughtful, sincere. She whispered to herself, "He's nothing like his brother." Her hand curled around the coffee mug, heart torn between two truths. He wasn't the man she came to destroy, but he was the one she would destroy if she kept going. Candida closed her eyes and exhaled. "Stay focused," she told herself. Feelings don't belong in revenge. But deep down, she already knew. Feelings had arrived uninvited, and this was only the beginning. Candida didn't expect her first week at Farmson Holdings to feel like walking through fire with a smile. Every corridor carried whispers. The new hire with the Joetta name had everyone curious. Some were polite, others cautious, and a few bold enough to ask, "Are you related to that Joetta?" She always answered with the same calm lie. Distant relation. By the second week, she had already learned how the company moved, the rhythm of the boardroom, the power in silence, the hierarchy of confidence. And at the center of it all stood Justin Farmson, composed, observant, and impossible to read. He wasn't the kind of CEO who barked orders. He spoke in low tones that made people lean in. When he entered a room, things slowed down. You didn't hear authority in his voice. You felt it. Candida found herself studying him more than she wanted to admit. The way he read reports line by line, the way he always noticed when someone was nervous, and how he never let arrogance replace respect. During meetings, he'd often turn to her for input. "Candida, what do you think?" he'd ask, without glancing at anyone else. The first time, it caught her off guard. "Me. Yes, you. You seem to see things others overlook." His tone wasn't flattery, it was trust, the kind she hadn't felt in years. After the meeting, he stopped her by the door. "You handled yourself well," he said. "You didn't agree with me just to agree. I like that. Should I take that as a compliment or a warning?" She replied lightly. He smiled. "Both." That smile stayed with her longer than it should have. The following weeks blurred into long hours and small victories. Candida's reports became sharper, her department smoother, and without realizing it, she began anticipating Justin's expectations before he spoke them. They developed a quiet rhythm, a nod across the table, a shared glance. During tense calls, a soft good night before she left the office. One Thursday evening, she was the last to leave. The floor was empty, the city lights glowing through the glass. She was gathering her files when she heard footsteps. "You shouldn't still be here," Justin said, his voice soft from behind her. She turned, startled. "Neither should you," he chuckled. "Fair point." He leaned against the doorway, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. It was the first time she saw him out of his usual perfect composure. "You work hard," he said. "More than most." "Old habit," she replied. "It keeps me focused." "On what?" She hesitated, meeting his eyes. "On finishing what I start." His gaze lingered a second too long. "That's a dangerous kind of focus." "Why?" "Because sometimes what we start isn't what we're meant to finish." Her breath hitched. His words cut deeper than he intended. For a moment, she forgot who she was supposed to be, the woman with a plan, the one carrying her father's ghost. Justin looked away, sensing the heaviness in her silence. "Sorry, I didn't mean to sound cryptic. I just know what it's like to work to forget." That struck her. "Forget what?" He gave a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Some things don't belong in boardrooms." He picked up her file from the desk, handed it to her. "Go home, Candida. The work will wait." She nodded, her voice lower now. "Good night, sir." "Justin," he corrected gently. Just Justin after hours. Her pulse jumped. "Good night, Justin." He smiled again, softer this time, before turning away. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing his voice over and over, because sometimes what we start isn't what we're meant to finish. For the first time in years, her thoughts weren't filled with revenge. They were filled with him, his calm tone, his quiet strength, his rare smile. But feelings were dangerous. She knew that, because every emotion she allowed to grow was a threat to the plan she had built. And yet, When she closed her eyes, she didn't see Daniel Farmson's empire falling. She saw Justin Farmson standing under the office light, sleeves rolled up, saying her name like it mattered. Candida turned on her side, whispering to the dark, "Don't forget why you're here." But her heart answered before her mind could. Because of him. The nights at Farmson Holdings were becoming longer. Candida told herself it was about dedication, not distraction. Yet every late hour she stayed, she noticed he stayed too. At first, it was a coincidence. Then, it became routine. The quiet hum of the city through the glass walls, the soft buzz of the desk lamp, and the faint rustle of papers between them turned into a rhythm only they shared. Justin would step out of his office, coffee mug in hand, and stop by her desk. "Still at it?" he'd ask, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "I could say the same," she'd reply without looking up. "Touché," he'd say, his tone carrying that warmth that made it hard to breathe. One evening, the power flickered briefly during a storm. The overhead lights dimmed, leaving only the glow from their laptops. She heard him chuckle softly. "Guess even billion-dollar companies aren't immune to bad weather." Candida smiled. "Some things money can't control." He turned his head toward her, eyes glinting faintly under the laptop light. "That's true, and those things are usually the ones worth keeping." The air shifted. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. "Like what?" she asked, her voice quieter now. He took a sip of his coffee, not breaking eye contact. "Time. Trust. People who remind you what matters." Her heartbeat quickened. "That's a rare list for a man in your position." "Maybe I'm tired of chasing numbers," he said softly. "Maybe I'm looking for something that doesn't come with a profit margin." For a second, the world outside disappeared, the rain tapping against the windows, the distant honking below, everything. Justin looked away first, clearing his throat. "You should call it a night. It's getting late." "So should you," she said, her tone softer than she intended. He smiled. "Only if you promise to get home safe." "I always do." But when she gathered her things, he was already waiting by the elevator. "I'll drive you," he said. "Justin, that's not necessary." "It's late," he interrupted gently, "and I'd rather not risk you waiting for a ride in this weather." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right." The drive was quiet at first. Rain streaked across the windshield as the car moved through the city. She watched the drops race each other down the glass, trying not to. Think about how his voice filled the small space like a calm melody. He finally spoke. "You don't talk much about yourself." "Not much to say," she replied. "I don't believe that." She smiled faintly. "What do you want to know?" He glanced at her, then back at the road. "What makes you stay up working this late when you could go home and rest?" She paused. "Maybe because resting feels harder than working." He nodded slowly, as if he understood every word. "Yeah, I know that feeling." Something about the honesty in his tone made her chest ache. When they pulled up in front of her apartment, he didn't rush to unlock the doors. He turned to her instead. "I know you came here to work," he said quietly, "but don't lose yourself in it." "I won't," she said, her voice low. "I promise." He nodded once, his gaze lingering a moment too long before he said, "Good night, Candida." "Good night, Justin." The sound of her name in his voice stayed with her all night. She walked into her apartment, set her bag down, and stood by the window. The rain had softened, but her thoughts hadn't. She tried to remember her plan, the goal, the motive, the revenge that was supposed to keep her heart steady. But all she could think about was the quiet way he said her name, as if it carried meaning. She whispered to herself, this wasn't supposed to feel real. Yet, somewhere deep inside she already knew. The boundaries she built to protect herself had started to blur. And once feelings cross those lines, nothing ever stays the same. Autumn crept into Houston quietly. The trees outside Farmson Holdings turned amber, and the air carried that soft chill that made people crave warmth, not from the weather, but from someone. For Candida, warmth had started to look like Justin Farmson. It wasn't intentional. It was in the way he checked on her during long meetings, how he noticed when she hadn't eaten, or how, He remembered small things, her favorite coffee, her habit of tapping her pen when deep in thought. He was gentle in a world that rewarded hardness. Weeks passed, and she began to forget her mission in pieces. Every smile, every quiet laugh chipped away at the wall she had built. But she never said it aloud, not even to herself. One night, after a successful product launch, the company held a dinner at a downtown restaurant. Crystal chandeliers hung low, jazz played softly, and laughter filled the room. Candida sat across from Justin, watching him speak with ease, the kind that came from confidence without arrogance. When their eyes met across the table, he smiled, that subtle, knowing smile that seemed meant only for her. Her chest tightened. Later that night, as guests left in groups, Justin approached her. "Come with me for a moment," he said. His tone wasn't commanding. It was gentle, but it left no room for refusal. She followed him out of the restaurant and into the cool night. The city buzzed around them, but his car was parked a few feet away. He opened the door for her, and she hesitated. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." 15 minutes later, they arrived at Memorial Park. The city lights glowed faintly behind them, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the silence. He led her down a quiet path to a bench overlooking the water. She turned to him, curious. "You bring all your employees here?" He smiled slightly. "Only the ones who forget to breathe." Her lips curved faintly. "And you think I'm one of them?" "I know you are." They sat in silence for a while. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. Justin's shoulders relaxed as he looked out over the water. "I used to come here a lot," he said softly, "when my brother was still running the company. Back then, I thought success meant control, that if you worked hard enough, nothing could fall apart." "And did it work?" she asked. He gave a quiet laugh. "No. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. I learned that the hard way." Candida turned toward him. "You talk like a man who's lost something." He met her eyes, his voice lower now. "I have. I lost trust. I lost myself for a while. But then I started rebuilding, carefully." Her throat tightened. His honesty disarmed her more than any charm could. "Justin," she began, unsure why her voice trembled. He looked at her fully then, his grey eyes reflecting the faint shimmer of the lake. "I'm not good at romance," he said quietly. "I don't know the right words, but I know what I feel." Her breath caught. "I've spent months watching you bring life into this place," he continued. "You make people better, Candida, including me, and I don't want to pretend it's just work anymore." Her heart pounded in her chest. "Justin." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Not elaborate, not extravagant, just simple and sincere. "I'm not asking for perfection," he said. "I'm asking for honesty. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to still. Her mind screamed, "No." Her heart whispered, "Yes." This was her chance. Her plan was unfolding perfectly. Closer access, full trust, a doorway to everything she came to destroy. She looked at him, saw the sincerity in his eyes, and it cut her deeply. Her father's words echoed, "Don't let them forget what they did to us." She swallowed hard. "Yes," she said softly. Justin smiled, relief washing over his face. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band that glinted under the park light. "Thank you for saying yes," he said. "I promise. I'll never give you a reason to regret it." She forced a small smile, but her chest ached as if she'd done something unforgivable. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering a moment longer than it should. "You deserve peace, Candida. I hope you'll find it, even if it starts with me." Those words stayed with her long after he drove her home. She stood by her bedroom window that night, staring at the ring on her finger. It gleamed softly, innocent and pure, a symbol of everything she wasn't. Her voice broke in a whisper. "You don't know what you've just married, Justin." But somewhere deep inside, a part of her wished he never would. The wedding was small. No reporters, no headlines, No staged photographs for society pages, just close friends, a handful of staff, and the quiet hum of a string quartet echoing through the rose garden of Justin's estate. Candida looked breathtaking in a simple ivory gown, not because it sparkled, but because she didn't need it to. Her beauty was in the stillness, the calm before something neither of them saw coming. Justin waited by the altar under a canopy of lilies. He looked at her like she was the only person in the world, and in that moment, she wished she could be the woman he believed her to be. When the officiant asked for vows, Justin spoke first. "I don't believe in perfect people," he said softly, eyes never leaving hers. "But I believe in people who try, and I see that in you. Every day." Her throat tightened. The sincerity in his words wasn't something she'd prepared for. She forced herself to hold his gaze and whispered her part, a collection of promises she didn't mean but spoke like she did. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembled slightly, not from nerves but from emotion, and when he kissed her, the world around her went quiet. She told herself it was just a formality, but the warmth of his lips said otherwise. That night, Houston glittered below the balcony of the Farmson estate. The city felt close, yet far, like the past she wanted to destroy and the future she didn't understand. Justin poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed her one. "To new beginnings," he said. Candida forced a smile. "To new beginnings." They clinked glasses. The sound rang clear, but her heart didn't. Later, when he turned to watch the city lights, she studied him quietly. His posture, his calm, his quiet confidence. He wasn't Daniel Farmson. He wasn't the arrogant man who'd crushed her father. And yet she wore his ring like a weapon. In the following weeks, life with Justin fell into a rhythm she hadn't expected. He woke early, cooked breakfast, and left handwritten notes on the counter before heading to meetings. She worked from the home office, managing communications for the company, maintaining professionalism, even as her personal life blurred with her career. Every day she gathered information, contracts, board decisions, internal reports. Each file brought her closer to the truth she wanted to expose. But with every dinner they shared, every laugh that escaped her without warning, her resolve cracked a little more. One evening, as she was reviewing documents, Justin appeared at the doorway. "You've been at that desk for 3 hours," he said, crossing his arms. "Deadlines," she replied. He leaned against the frame. "Deadlines can wait. You haven't eaten." She looked up at him, half ready to protest, but stopped when she saw the faint worry in his eyes. "I ordered your favorite, grilled salmon," he said. "Come eat before it gets cold." Her voice softened. "You remembered?" He smiled faintly. "I remember everything that matters." That simple line disarmed her. Dinner was quiet but intimate. Small glances, shared laughter, and the kind of peace she hadn't known in years. Afterward, when he walked her back to the study, he paused by the door. "You work hard, Candida," he said, "but I hope you're not working to run away from something." She froze, the words hitting too close. "What makes you think I am?" He shrugged lightly. "Because I recognize it. I used to do the same." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, 2 people who had both been running from ghosts. When he left the room, she sat there for a long time, staring at the flickering cursor on her screen. Her plan felt suddenly heavy, like a burden she couldn't carry anymore. She whispered into the still air, "You're not supposed to make me care." But caring was already happening, slowly, quietly, without permission. The house that was meant to be her stage of deception was starting to feel like a home. And the man she thought she'd destroy was teaching her, without trying, what love could look like when it was real. Candida turned off her laptop, resting her head in her hands. The silence pressed in around her, but it wasn't empty. It was full of questions, guilt, and feelings she couldn't name. For the first time in years, revenge didn't feel satisfying. It felt wrong. And that terrified her more than losing control ever did. It began with a storm. Not the kind that tears roofs off or floods streets, the quiet kind that fills the night with whispers and soft thunder far away. Candida sat by the window, Laptop open but untouched, the rain tracing lines down the glass. Justin had gone to a business dinner hours ago, yet her mind wouldn't rest. She wasn't sure when she started waiting for his return, but now she listened for it like a heartbeat. When the sound of his car finally broke through the rain, relief washed over her before she could stop it. Moments later, the door opened, and he stepped inside, shaking off his coat. His shirt was slightly damp, his tie undone, and exhaustion lingered in his expression, the kind that success never seems to fix. "You're still up," he said gently. She tried to sound casual. "Couldn't sleep." He smiled faintly. "Neither could I." He walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of wine, and handed her one. "To sleepless minds," he said softly. They sat across from each other, the rain outside a steady rhythm that seemed to sync with the silence between them. After a few moments, Justin broke it. "You ever feel like the past follows you no matter how far you move forward?" Candida's fingers tightened around the glass. "Every day." He nodded, as if her answer didn't surprise him. "I keep thinking about all the things I could have done differently. Maybe if I'd been stronger, my brother wouldn't have hurt so many people." Her chest tightened. "You can't take blame for someone else's choices." "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes guilt doesn't care about logic." She looked at him then, really looked. The confident CEO was gone. In his place was a man quietly at war with himself. "Justin," she said softly, "you're not your brother." His eyes met hers. "You sound sure of that." "I am," she whispered. The air between them changed. He reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. It was unintentional, but neither of them moved. She could have pulled away. She should have, but she didn't. His voice dropped lower. "Candida." Her name came out like a confession. Something inside her broke. The line she'd drawn, the walls she'd built, everything. She didn't know who moved first, only that suddenly he was close, too close, and the world outside disappeared. His lips met hers, hesitant at first, as if asking permission. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. It was real. A kiss that carried everything they hadn't said, his loneliness, her guilt, and a longing neither of them wanted to admit. When he finally pulled back, he exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry," he said, though his eyes said otherwise. She shook her head. "Don't be." He hesitated, searching her face. "You make it hard to stay in control." Candida's heart raced. "Then maybe control isn't what you need tonight." That one line, quiet, vulnerable, and honest, changed everything. He touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheek gently, as if afraid she'd vanish. And for a moment she wished she could forget why she was there, who she was pretending to be, and what she was planning to do. Because this, his warmth, his quiet devotion, felt like everything she had once prayed for. When she woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. Justin was already up, making coffee. He turned when he saw her and smiled, the kind of smile that starts in the eyes. "Morning," he said. "I didn't want to wake you." She pulled the sheet closer, heart fluttering with a mix of tenderness and regret. He walked over and kissed her forehead. "You don't owe me anything, Candida. But thank you for last night." She swallowed, her voice low. "It wasn't just last night." He smiled softly. "Good, because I don't want it to be." When he left for the office, she sat there for a long time, staring at the cup he left behind. The scent of coffee lingered, and so did the weight of what she'd done. Not the intimacy, but the meaning behind it. Her plan was slipping through her fingers. Every piece of hate she held for the Farmsons was fading in the warmth of one man's sincerity. She whispered to herself, "You were supposed to destroy him, not love him." But the truth had already settled deep in her heart. Love had entered her story quietly without asking for permission, and now it was too late to turn back. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning. Justin had left early for a board meeting, leaving a note on the kitchen counter. "Breakfast in the fridge. Don't skip it. I'll be back before lunch. Justin." Candida smiled faintly as she read it. His little notes had become a habit. Small, ordinary gestures that had begun to mean more than she wanted to admit. She walked into his study to find a spare pen and noticed a file cabinet slightly open. It wasn't unusual. Justin kept work documents everywhere, but one folder caught her attention. Her father's name was on the label. Her heart stopped. She froze, staring at those black ink letters. Joetta Haulage Contract, 2010. For a moment, she couldn't move. Her pulse roared in her ears. With trembling hands, she pulled the folder out and laid it on the desk. The papers were old, edges slightly yellowed. She began to read. And then, the ground beneath her heart gave way. The truth was nothing like the story she'd built her life around. Her father had breached the contract first. He had taken payment for services never completed. There were signed receipts, emails, and even copies of bank statements. The Farmsons hadn't ruined him out of cruelty. They'd cut ties to protect the company. Candida's throat went dry. Every memory she'd carried, every ounce of hate, every vow for revenge, twisted into shame. The pain that drove her was real, but the story behind it had been wrong. Her father hadn't been destroyed by greed. He'd been undone by his own choices. She sank to her knees on the carpet, clutching the papers to her chest. The weight of years pressed down on her, heavier than anything she'd ever carried. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "No, no, please." But the evidence was undeniable. Her phone buzzed softly on the desk. A message from Justin. "Leaving the office now. Can't wait to see you." She stared at it through tears. The man she came to destroy was innocent. The man she used was the only one who had ever treated her with kindness. The front door opened minutes later. She didn't even hear him come in. "Candida?" Justin called, his voice gentle. "I brought lunch." He stopped when he saw her on the floor, surrounded by papers. He rushed forward. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Her voice broke. "You didn't do it." He frowned. "Didn't do what?" "Daniel Farmson didn't ruin my father. My father ruined himself." Justin froze. Confusion turned to realization. His gaze dropped to the papers scattered across the carpet. "You found them," he said quietly. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You knew. You knew this whole time." "I did," he admitted softly. "But I didn't know how to tell you without hurting you more." Candida covered her face. "I spent years hating your family. I came here to destroy you." The words hung between them like thunder. He stared at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Her breath trembled. "I applied to Farmson Holdings to get close. I wanted to make you pay for what I thought your brother did. I only married you because I wanted revenge." The silence that followed was unbearable. Justin's face hardened, not with anger, but with heartbreak. You married me for revenge?" She nodded, choking back sobs. "But I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean to love you." Justin stood there, motionless. His expression was calm, but his eyes said everything. Disbelief, betrayal, pain. "I need air," he whispered. "Justin, please." He stepped back. "Don't. Not right now." He turned and walked out of the room without another word. The sound of the door closing felt like a final goodbye. Candida sat on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of her past, and the truth she couldn't escape. The love that had healed her was now the same love she'd broken. She whispered through tears, "I was wrong about everything." But the house was silent. And the man she loved was gone. The house felt bigger when he was gone. Every sound seemed louder. The creak of the stairs, the tick of the clock, the soft hum of the refrigerator. Candida walked through the empty rooms like a stranger, each step echoing what she'd lost. Justin hadn't called. He hadn't written. He simply packed a small bag that night and left. His assistant emailed her 2 days later with a polite, impersonal note. "Mr. Farmson will be in New York for an indefinite period. All company matters can be directed to the acting coup." No message for her. No explanation. She didn't blame him. She wouldn't have forgiven herself either. Candida moved out the following week. She couldn't stay in a house built on lies. Not when every corner reminded her of the man she'd hurt. She found a small apartment on the east side of Houston. It was quiet, modest, and painfully empty. The kind of place where guilt had room to breathe. She spent her days working remotely for the company, keeping her head down, finishing reports, and avoiding questions. She stopped wearing the ring, stopped checking her phone, stopped pretending she was okay. At night, she sat by the window, the same way she had before she ever met him, staring at city lights and replaying every word she wished she'd said differently. One evening, she opened her laptop and began typing a letter she never planned to send. Justin, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I need you to know that what started as a lie became the only truth I've ever known. You changed me. You made me see the difference between justice and vengeance. I was blind, and you gave me sight. I was cold, and you gave me warmth. I can't ask you to come back. I just hope you find peace, even if it's without me. She read it twice, then closed the laptop without saving it. Some words were too heavy to send. Days turned into weeks. Then one afternoon, a package arrived at her door. A plain brown envelope, no return address. Inside was a single note in handwriting she recognized instantly. Truth hurts, but lies kill slower. When you're ready to live honestly, come home. Her heart stopped. She read it again and again, until the words blurred through tears. He hadn't given up on her, not completely. She pressed the note to her chest, whispering, I'm ready to live honestly. For the first time in months, she felt something close to hope. But she didn't rush to find him. She knew she needed to earn forgiveness, not beg for it. So she began small. She volunteered at a local youth program that trained young drivers for logistics work, a cause she knew he supported. She used her communication skills to raise funds, manage events, and teach young people about integrity in business. Every act of service felt like a step toward healing. The world no longer revolved around revenge. It revolved around redemption. One evening, while helping organize an event, she overheard a volunteer say, Farmson Holdings is hosting a charity drive next month for logistics scholarships. Her breath caught. His company. His event. Maybe fate was finally giving her the courage she'd been waiting for. Candida smiled faintly, clutching the pen in her hand. I think I'll sign up to help, because if she was going to find forgiveness, she had to start where she did lost everything, in the place where love and truth first collided. The day of the charity event arrived with soft sunlight and quiet nerves. Candida stood in front of the mirror, smoothing her shirt, her reflection unfamiliar. She no longer looked like the woman who had plotted revenge or lived in guilt. She looked like someone learning how to begin again. Farmson Holdings' charity event for youth logistics training was being held in a downtown warehouse turned community center. The theme read, Driving Toward Tomorrow. It was Justin's initiative, one that had grown every year since he took over the company. Candida signed in as a volunteer, keeping her name badge simple, C. Joetta. She didn't expect to see him. She told herself she was there for the cause, for the young people who deserved opportunities her father's mistakes had denied. But her heart still raced each time she heard a familiar voice in the crowd. She kept busy, directing attendees, stacking boxes, organizing forms, until a hush spread through the room. She turned. Justin had arrived. He walked in wearing a crisp grey suit, sleeves rolled up, no entourage. No unnecessary noise, just the calm presence she remembered. The sight of him made her chest ache. He spoke briefly with the coordinators, shook hands, and moved through the volunteers with quiet kindness. Every once in a while, his eyes swept across the room, until they found her. Their gaze locked. Neither moved. The noise around them faded into nothing. Then, slowly, he began to walk toward her. Candida's breath trembled. She dropped her clipboard, nerves tightening around her throat. When he stopped in front of her, he looked the same, except his eyes carried something deeper, something softer. Still hard-working, he said quietly. She tried to smile, old habits. For a long moment, they stood there, suspended between past and present. "I didn't think I'd see you here," he said. "I wasn't sure I should come," she replied. "But I wanted to help. It felt right." He nodded slowly. "It suits you. Helping others." Silence followed, heavy but not cruel. She swallowed. "I read your note." He tilted his head slightly. "And?" Her voice broke. "I'm ready to live honestly. I've been trying to—" He looked down, then back at her. "I know." She frowned softly. "You do?" He nodded toward the far wall. "My foundation sponsors this program. I've heard what you've been doing. You've made a difference." Her eyes welled. "I wasn't doing it for recognition." "I know," he said again, his tone quiet but sincere. That's why it mattered. The air between them shifted, no longer cold, no longer angry, just fragile and human. "Justin," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply before meeting her gaze again. "I know you are. But saying sorry isn't the hard part." "I know," she said. "Living it is." He nodded slowly. "Then, live it." They spent the rest of the afternoon working side by side, not talking much, just existing in the same space again. At one point, he helped her lift a heavy box, their hands brushing for a second that felt longer than it should. It wasn't passion, it was peace, the kind that comes after a storm finally runs out of rain. When the event ended, and the volunteers began to leave, Justin found her by the exit. "Can I walk you to your car?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. The evening air was cool, filled with the smell of asphalt and new beginnings. As they reached her car, she turned to him. "I didn't expect kindness from you." He gave a faint smile. "Maybe that's why you needed it." Her voice trembled. "Can we ever start over?" He studied her for a moment, then said softly, "Only if you promise. No more lies." Tears glistened in her eyes as she nodded. No more lies. He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek, his touch careful, like he was afraid to break her again. "Then we'll see where honesty takes us," he said. She smiled weakly. "Hopefully somewhere better than revenge." "Anywhere is better than that," he replied gently. He opened her car door for her and stepped back, his expression unreadable yet full of hope. As she drove away, the note replayed in her mind. Truth hurts, but lies kill slower. She finally understood what it meant. Because honesty wasn't punishment. It was freedom. And for the first time in years, she felt free. The weeks after the charity event passed in small, steady steps. Justin didn't rush anything, and Candida didn't ask for more than he could give. They texted sometimes, short, careful messages about work or community projects, but behind each line was an unspoken question neither dared to ask aloud. Can we still belong to each other? One Friday evening, she got a message from him. Dinner? Not business, just dinner. Her hands trembled slightly before she typed back, "Yes." He chose a quiet restaurant by the bay, far from their usual spots. No press, no staff, just low lights, soft music, and the scent of grilled seafood drifting through the air. When he arrived, he looked less like the CEO she'd once feared, and more like the man she'd learned to love, relaxed, eyes steady, tie loosened. "You look good," he said. "So do you," she replied softly. They ordered simply, salmon for her, steak for him, and for a while they talked about safe things, the youth program, company updates, Houston's traffic. But the comfort between them felt fragile, like glass that could crack with one wrong word. Halfway through dinner, he set down his fork and looked at her. "Do you ever wish we could erase everything and start fresh?" She met his gaze. "Sometimes. But if we erased it, we'd lose the lessons that changed us." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you'd write in one of your reports." She laughed quietly. "Maybe I've learned a little from you." He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "You've learned from pain, Candida. That's different, and stronger." Her breath caught. "I didn't think you still saw strength in me." "I never stopped." he said simply. The words sank deep. After dinner, they walked along the bay. The water shimmered under the city lights, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Then he stopped and turned toward her. "I've thought about us," he said. "What happened? What broke? I can forgive you, Candida, but forgiveness doesn't rebuild trust on its own. We have to earn it, both of us." She nodded, voice soft. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning it if I have to." He smiled faintly. "Let's start with one honest day at a time." From then on, they did exactly that. They met for coffee on Sundays, worked together on community projects, and slowly began to share laughter again, the kind that felt new but familiar. At the office, he no longer avoided her. Instead, he treated her like an equal, not a reminder of betrayal. One evening, while reviewing documents, she spilled her coffee. Justin laughed, grabbed a napkin, and helped her clean it up. When their hands brushed, he didn't pull away. Neither did she. Later that night, he texted her, "Dinner tomorrow? My place." She smiled at the screen. "As long as it's not about contracts." "No contracts," he replied. "Just honesty." His house hadn't changed much, but the energy felt different, lighter. He cooked while she set the table. They talked about small things, the way Houston weather turned without warning, the book she was reading, his new partnership with local drivers. When they finished eating, he said quietly, "It feels good to have someone here again." She met his eyes. "It feels good to be trusted again." He moved closer. "You're still learning to forgive yourself, aren't you?" She nodded. "Every day." He touched her hand gently. "Then let me help." They didn't rush into passion. Instead, they shared quiet closeness, her head on his shoulder, his hand resting over hers. It wasn't the heat of their past. It was something steadier, deeper. Two people rebuilding not because of what they lost, but because of what they finally understood. That night as she left, he walked her to the door. "Good night, Candida," he said. She smiled. "Good night, Justin." He paused. "I'm proud of the woman you've become." She blinked back tears. "And I'm grateful for the man who let me try again." When the door closed behind her, she felt peace instead of pain. For the first time, love didn't feel like a battle. It felt like healing. News of Daniel Farmson's return reached them quietly. A brief mention in a trade journal. Former Farmson Holdings executive returns to Houston after years abroad. Candida read the line twice, her stomach tightening. For 10 years, that name had been a shadow. Now it was walking back into the light. That evening, she showed the article to Justin. He didn't look surprised. "I heard from him this morning. He wants to talk." "About what?" "Everything, I guess." He paused. "I told him he could come by tomorrow." Candida felt the old fear rise, but beneath it there was calm. "Then I should be here." "You don't have to face him," Justin said gently. "Yes, I do," she replied. "If I'm learning to live honestly, I can't hide when truth knocks on the door." The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. Daniel stood there, older, heavier, hair graying at the edges, pride worn down by years of silence. For a second, none of them spoke. He broke it first. "May I come in?" Justin stepped aside. "You're already home, Daniel." They sat in the living room. The air felt still, heavy with everything unsaid. Daniel turned to Candida. "You look like your father." Her hands tightened in her lap. "People say that. I suppose you hate me." She shook her head slowly. "I used to." He let out a tired breath. "You were right to. I handled things wrong back then. Your father made mistakes, yes, but I was arrogant. I ended the contract like it meant nothing. I never considered how it would destroy him. I told myself it was business. It wasn't. It was pride." Candida blinked back tears. "My father spent his last years blaming you. I spent mine blaming you too." Daniel's voice broke. "I know. And I'm sorry." Justin listened quietly, eyes low. After a long pause, Candida said softly, "I don't know if forgiveness fixes anything, but holding on to hate nearly ruined me. So yes, I forgive you." Daniel looked stunned. Just like that? It's not just like that. It took me years and a good man to learn that peace costs less than vengeance. Justin reached over, taking her hand. She didn't flinch this time. Daniel's voice steadied. Justin told me what happened between you two. I didn't raise him to forgive that easily, yet he did. Maybe I can learn from my little brother. Justin gave a small smile. Maybe we all can. For the first time in years, the three of them sat together without bitterness. No shouting, no accusations, just quiet understanding. When Daniel stood to leave, he looked at Candida. Thank you for hearing me. I hope you build something better than we ever did. She nodded. I already am. That night, she and Justin sat on the porch watching the sun fade behind the trees. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, he said, You handled that with grace. I was shaking the whole time, she admitted. He smiled. You didn't show it. She leaned against his shoulder. It feels like a door finally closed today. He nodded. And maybe a new one opened. Candida looked up at the dimming sky. Do you ever think our love was meant to happen, even if it started wrong? Justin turned to her, eyes soft. It didn't start wrong. It started human. The quiet that followed was gentle, not empty. Because forgiveness had finally finished what revenge began. A week after Daniel's visit, Justin asked Candida to clear her Saturday. He didn't say where they were going, only that it was important. They drove for nearly an hour, past the heart of Houston and out toward the quieter edges of town. Candida watched the scenery change, skyscrapers fading into open fields and quiet roads she hadn't seen in years. When Justin turned onto a narrow gravel lane, her breath caught. The sign at the end read, Joetta Haulage Depot, private property, her father's land. She looked at him, stunned. Justin, why are we here? He parked beside an old warehouse that had once been her father's pride. The building still stood, weathered but strong. He stepped out of the car and opened her door. Because this story should end where it began. Candida followed him slowly, heart pounding. The ground crunched beneath her shoes as memories flooded back, the smell of oil and metal. The laughter of her father's crew, his voice calling out orders, proud and alive. Tears blurred her vision. I haven't been here since the auction. Justin handed her a folder. Open it. Inside were legal documents bearing her name. Title, deeds, ownership, transfers, zoning approvals. She looked up at him, trembling. You bought it back? He nodded. I bought it for you. No debts, no contracts, no conditions. It's yours. Her voice broke. Why would you do this after everything I did to you? He stepped closer, eyes steady, because you loved your father enough to fight for him, even if the fight was misguided, and because I love the woman who learned to fight for what's right. Her tears fell freely now. Justin. He brushed her cheek gently. You spent years carrying pain that wasn't yours to carry. It's time to lay it down. Candida turned toward the warehouse, the morning sun glinting off its steel roof. I thought revenge would heal me, she whispered. But this gives me peace. Justin smiled. Then it's done its job. They walked through the building together. Dust floated in the light. Her father's old office still had his name faintly etched on the door. She ran her fingers over it, whispering, We're home, Dad. When she turned back, Justin was watching her with quiet pride. What will you do with it? He asked. She smiled through her tears. Rebuild it. Not as Joetta Haulage, as something new, honest, clean, maybe Joetta Freight Solutions. He nodded. That sounds right. She took his hand. Thank you for giving me back what the past took away. He squeezed her fingers gently. You gave it back to yourself, Candida. I just opened the door. They stepped outside together, wind brushing against them, the field stretching wide like a blank page waiting to be written on. Candida closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in deeply. For the first time in her life, the air didn't taste like anger. It tasted like freedom. 3 months later, the sign went up. Joetta Freight Solutions. Honest work, true heart. Candida stood outside the freshly painted office with a clipboard in hand, the morning sun warm on her face. Workers moved in and out, carrying boxes, testing new trucks, hanging banners. For the first time, the sound of engines didn't remind her of loss. It reminded her of legacy. Her father's dream had come full circle, reborn through lessons she had bled to learn. This time, there were no shortcuts, no grudges, no lies. Just work, integrity, and hope. Justin stood a few feet away, sleeves rolled up, talking with a contractor. When he turned to her, the look in his eyes said everything. Admiration, respect, love. She smiled. You showed up early. I didn't want to miss history being made, he said, walking over. She laughed softly. It's just a company. No, he said gently. It's proof that forgiveness can build more than hate ever could. They walked through the new facility together. Candida's team, a mix of old hands and new faces, greeted her warmly. They called her boss, a title that made her heart swell for reasons far beyond pride. When the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Justin stood beside her. The local press had gathered, small business reporters, foundation, partners, and volunteers from the youth program she'd once helped. A reporter asked, "What inspired you to start again after so much loss?" Candida smiled, holding the microphone with steady hands. Because love didn't let me stop. I spent years chasing justice for the wrong reasons. But love, not the soft kind, the strong kind, showed me that real power isn't revenge, it's restoration. Applause filled the air. She looked at Justin as the ribbon fell, his eyes full of quiet pride. That night, after everyone left, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the yard. The trucks were lined up in neat rows, ready to roll at dawn. The city lights shimmered in the distance, but the only light she cared about was the one in his eyes. I used to dream of revenge, she said quietly. Now I dream of peace. Justin slid his arm around her waist. And you built it. From the same ground that once broke you. She turned toward him, her voice soft. I couldn't have done this without you. He smiled. You could have. You just didn't have to. They stood there for a long time, saying nothing, the wind gentle, the world still. Candida leaned her head against his shoulder. You think we'll ever stop being haunted by the past? He kissed her temple. No, but we'll keep turning it into something better. She smiled through a quiet breath. Then maybe that's all healing is. Turning pain into purpose. Exactly, he said. And you did it beautifully. Above them, the city glowed with 1,000 tiny lights, reminders that even in darkness, life keeps shining. For the first time in forever, Candida felt whole. The ghosts of revenge had finally fallen silent. All that remained was love, steady and real. The Texas sun dipped low across the horizon, painting the sky in amber and gold. Candida stood barefoot in the garden behind their home, the same place, where they'd once said I do, with secrets hidden between them. Today, there were no secrets. Rows of white chairs lined the lawn. Only a few guests attended. Friends, staff, and volunteers who had become family through the years. Soft music floated through the air. The scent of roses mingled with the breeze. Justin waited under the arch, simple and calm, his grey suit open at the collar, eyes fixed on her, like she was still his greatest surprise. When she reached him, he whispered, "You're beautiful." She smiled. "This time, I mean every word I say." The officiant nodded to them. "You've asked to renew your vows in your own words." Candida took a slow breath and began. "Justin, I once stood here wearing a mask. I loved you with half my heart and hid the rest behind fear and pride. You taught me that love isn't about winning, it's about surrender. You showed me that truth doesn't break love, it makes it real. So I promise you this, no more walls, no more lies, only honesty, even when it's hard, and love, even when it hurts." Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed clear. Justin took her hands, his tone steady and low. "Candida, I didn't fall in love with a perfect woman. I fell in love with the one who fought her way back from pain. You've taught me that forgiveness is stronger than any empire I could ever build. So here's my vow. No conditions, no judgment. Just us. Building every day from truth. He opened a small velvet box and revealed 2 simple gold bands. Inside hers, a small engraving, no more lies, only love. He slipped it onto her finger, the metal warm from his hand. The officiant smiled. By the power of love and choice, I pronounce you husband and wife. Again. Applause rippled softly through the crowd. Justin pulled her close, kissing her gently, their foreheads resting together afterward. Around them, the world felt still, the air thick with the quiet certainty that this time, everything was real. Later that evening, when the guests were gone, and the candles still glowed, on the patio, they sat side by side watching the last light fade. Candida leaned against him, voice a whisper. Do you ever think about how it all started? Now and then, he said, but I don't regret it. We had to walk through fire to find peace. She smiled. I married you for revenge and ended up finding redemption. He brushed his thumb across her hand. And I married you for love and found purpose. They looked out over the horizon as the first stars appeared. Candida exhaled softly. You were right. Truth hurts. Justin smiled. But it heals better than any lie ever could. She tilted her head toward him. I love you. He kissed her forehead. I love you too, for the truth of who you are. The night wrapped around them, quiet, calm, forgiving. Love had started as punishment. It ended in grace. Love doesn't always begin right. Sometimes it starts in anger, grows through mistakes, and blooms only after pain teaches humility. Candida Joeta thought she married for revenge, but love rewrote her heart, showing her that forgiveness is the truest victory. If this story moved you, share it in the comments. Would you forgive if someone married you for revenge, but came to love you sincerely? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Leonardo Stories, where every story reminds you, love isn't perfect, but it's always worth it.